So, guess what? There is more. There is more. More for me to break down. Thanks to this Entertainment Weekly article saying DC's Man of Tomorrow, James Gunn on Superman, Gods and Monsters, and what's next. So just like my previous video where we covered a bunch of different quotes and I, talked about each of them, we're doing the same again today because there's even more insight into all kinds of things. I'm going to get into it as comprehensively as I can. So sit back, relax as we have a good old Boba ramble about what James Gunn has to say here. Go ahead, leave a like on the video if you enjoy it. It really does help me out quite a bit. And of course, consider subscribing, just in case you haven't subscribed already. Quite a lot of you have subscribed from my past couple of videos pointing out how 51% of you aren't subscribed, somewhere around there. So maybe double check if that's you. If it is, then maybe today is the day you'll hit the subscribe button for more videos like this to come, because there's a lot of DCU content heading our way. So right away, I want to start off with, once again, The Batman 2, because this is like an ongoing thing. I mean, it always has been, but recently the whole topic's been blowing up even more with various quotes. And this time, we actually have a date for when the script should be handed in. So Entertainment Weekly say, also, a lot of people, I'm sure, are blowing you up on social media, probably in person too, about the state of The Batman 2. Gunn says, listen, we're supposed to get a script in June. I hope that happens. We feel really good about it. Matt's excited. I talk to Matt all the time. I'm totally excited about it. So we can't wait to read the scripts, but we haven't read it yet, if that's your question. People should get off Matt's nuts because it's like, let the guy write the screenplay in the amount of time he needs to write it. That's just the way it is. He doesn't owe you something because you like his movie. I mean, you like his movie because of Matt. So let Matt do things the way he does. We got a script hand-in date, kind of, as I said, June. We don't have a specific day. Now, I know past Boba said that I don't have a specific date, but now Matt Reeves is apparently set to deliver the Batman 2 script on Monday, according to Matthew Bellany here, a founding partner for Puck News, an ex-editor for The Hollywood Reporter. So, there could be something to this, and it would, after all, match up to what James Gunn has said. We've also heard that the Batman 2 is reportedly planned to start production in January 2026, after Pattinson finishes work on Dune 3. The tentative expected date was around March, so I will say, take this with a grain of salt, but technically, if it is being handed in Monday, then yeah, 5-6 months of pre-production would mean that they could easily start filming in January if they wanted to. Even from scoopers behind the scenes, ones with very reputable, credibility like Apocalyptic Horseman, he's been saying this concretely from what he knows behind the scenes with confidence, saying, confirmed, told you all it was coming by the end of June and not Memorial Day. He's referring to that rumor where it's supposed to be handed in by Memorial Day, which James Gunn even shot down recently. But if you go back to Apocalyptic Horseman's tweet from back in May, quote tweeting the Raps article, he said, yep, heard this as well, and that he was expected to be done by June. This is why I was never worried. He's very, very close to finishing. The plan is to start casting in July, so hopefully we start getting updates in the summer/early fall. Now, all while it's still kind of arguably tentative, it's still very much so expected. So I guess one last time, what I'm trying to say is that the Batman Part 2 script should be, and probably is, right around the corner. We also had Entertainment Weekly say it sort of relates to one of the first questions I asked you, which is your relationship to social media. I can't imagine being in Matt's position, having to write a script while also being hounded on social media for updates. Gunn then says, well, I don't think Matt really pays attention to that stuff so much. He's got a lot of other things happening, so I don't think he lets it affect him. He's fine. But I am irritated by people. I mean, it's just that thing people don't need to be entitled about. It's going to come out when he feels good about the screenplay. And Matt's not going to give me the screenplay until he feels good about the screenplay. He does say that Matt's got a lot of other things happening. So, compared to Gunn, he probably doesn't let that affect him because he's got a lot going on. I'm not sure if that's a reference to the personal thing that Matt's got going on or rather, Matt Reeves just is a very, very busy man professionally as well, producing all of these different things, as well as writing the Batman Part 2, plus stuff going on in his personal life. But I don't really want to speculate about that too much. So now let's enter the DCU side of things. And we got some good nuggets of information here that I really want to hear your guys' speculation about in the comments. So Entertainment Weekly ask, you titled this first phase of the DCU as Gods and Monsters. How much of Superman is really crucial to that overarching story that you're thinking of telling across all these films and TV shows? Gunn then responds, oh, it is very important. I wouldn't say Creature Commandos is important, but Peacemaker and Superman are both pretty important in terms of getting to the bigger story. At the same time, I'm really trying to be careful that anyone can dip in and see the story that is up next and not feel like they're missing information. The other stories can provide added texture to what you're watching. That might change down the line as we get deeper into what's happening in this universe. It could be like Infinity War and Endgame, where, you kind of have to see Infinity War to know what's going on in Endgame. But right now, I'm trying to keep it so you don't have to see Superman to see Supergirl, for example. Even though there's a lot of stuff in Superman that leads to Peacemaker, you certainly don't need to see it to see Peacemaker. It's just good if you have. But we also say previously in the DCU before every episode. So the TV stuff's pretty easy. I like hearing that last little nugget there, like, before every episode, you're gonna see previously in the DC. That's pretty sick. So we could even arguably see some Superman clips in that. But yes, I'm glad we've all known that this is what his ideology or his execution will be, at least initially, because I think what he also says about, as we get further into it and the larger story, the overarching story of the DCU Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, still, we don't know what that is, but when that unfolds even more, yeah, sure, you might have like an Infinity War to Endgame situation where, at that point, when we're kind of doing a big kind of team-up movie or there's a big threat that needs to be faced, yeah, you might want to watch this movie, but that's not going to be the hugest priority, like from project to project. If we, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, now titled Supergirl, is going to be a fairly self-contained adventure of Kara in space. As he says here, like, Peacemaker and Superman are pretty important in terms of getting to that bigger story. And I've been wondering about that in one of my previous videos. Yes, sure, Superman is going to get into the first dip and live action look into the DCU, but what repercussions from that movie will ripple out into Peacemaker? And then Peacemaker's story still kind of having a larger impact. I have no idea if that's got to do with this other world, seemingly, that Peacemaker enters, where there is another version of White Dragon, his father, who's still alive, and maybe seemingly his brother, and also this other Peacemaker. But I just don't feel like we're going to get into the multiversal situation right away. So any speculation you have there, I would be dying to know how you think Superman and Peacemaker will truly contribute to building into that overarching story that Gunn has got planned and is also going to be visited in Lanterns, because they also said a while ago that Lanterns is going to be pretty significant into building into that overarching story. Now, continuing on, Entertainment Weekly then say, in terms of the timeline for the Gods and Monsters phase, Superman is shot and coming out this year, Peacemaker Season 2 coming out this year, Supergirl is wrapped, Clayface is going to be filmed. What's the next project that's closest to starting principal photography? Peacemaker and Superman are both going to end up being sound mixed and color timed at about the same time in the next 2 weeks. We're going to see early episodes of that soon. Lanterns is halfway through filming, and we're going to see early episodes of that soon as well. And just more on the Lantern side of things, we did hear from one of the actors, I think, who plays Jon Stewart's father in the show, that they're wrapping in July. So again, some of these comments were made a little while ago by the sounds of it. But then Gunn continues with even more larger teasers here, saying, then there's another TV show that's my favorite thing in all of this. That is hopefully getting made soon. It's just my favorite thing. And then there's the movie. Oh, shit. I don't know what I'm allowed to say or not to say, but there's a couple of other movies that are being written, one of which is in pretty good shape, another which is kind of closer to the start, but we feel positive about. And then there's another thing I'm writing, which I think it's okay. So what will be the next thing after Clayface is not 100% certain, but it's pretty certain. So, very, very, very interesting little teasers there. We've got a few projects right now which we don't have major updates on. Like we had that story about the Deathstroke and Bane project, which they could just be two characters of a larger team, so like the Secret Six, for example. The thing is, we haven't really heard anything about that, like properly or officially. But having said that, we've since had Apocalyptic Horseman for Nexus Point News say that the first written draft for the Bane and Deathstroke film at DC Studios has been turned in. So not like a massive update, but the first draft apparently has been handed in. Again, take it with a grain of salt, but a teeny little update there. We also have the Teen Titans, which Peter Safran and James Gunn have acknowledged, but that kind of feels to me more like where he says another, which is kind of closer to the start, but we feel positive about. But maybe, to be fair, that could be wrong, and Teen Titans by Ana Nogueira, who completely aced the Supergirl screenplay, according to Gunn, to the point of where they went straight into making that. She could be further along, so obviously this is a lot of guessing back and forth of what I'm doing here. Very intrigued about this TV show, though. Like, don't forget, we heard about a Dead Man possible animated series, and I don't know if he could be referring to that. And then, obviously, amongst all of that, he talks about his own project, which he's really excited about, which he says, you know, obviously he's only done a couple of treatments for it as of where it currently stands, and he's just thinking it's okay at this point. Entertainment Weekly then say, how much of these undisclosed titles are things that have already been announced versus things that haven't? So Gunn says, my favorite thing has not been announced at all. One of the scripts people kind of know about. My script people don't know about. The other script people don't know about. So it's mostly stuff people don't know about. A couple of those things announced in January 2023 are in pretty good shape in terms of coming up, but there was one thing that I knew about from the very beginning, that when I pitched to David Zaslav what the DCU would be, I pitched to him, but we did not announce it in that first meeting because I felt like it was too easy to rip off by another company. And so that's one of the main things. And it's like, what is that? What? I want to know what this is. I'm very, very intrigued. And he's got to be referring to the competition there, like the MCU. Like maybe if they get that idea, or maybe they might want to get a group of characters together and do it in the MCU, Marvel side of things, I guess. So Gunn's favorite thing, as we know, isn't announced at all. We've heard that before. We've got a couple of other scripts that people don't know about, okay. But then one of the main things was actually pitched all the way back in January 2023, but out of kind of concerns that another company might rip that off, he didn't announce it. What do you guys think that could be? I know I'm kind of just like throwing it back to you, but it could honestly be so many things. I wonder if it would be more likely some kind of, I don't know if I want to say team-up film, but some kind of movie where you have a bunch of characters together, because perhaps if you did that, you could, in theory, have another company get their version, or like they pull in various amounts of characters to kind of mimic a similar situation and like story. So I don't know. So do you think it's more likely that it could be like a team-esque kind of project? Or do you think it's something as random as like, we're doing Nightwing, but why would it be Nightwing, and why would you be worried about another company ripping off Nightwing when you could do any project in the MCU surrounding one individual character? So that's the logic I'm going with as to why it could be some kind of project that involves multiple DC characters. Honestly, my head is spinning when it comes to this because it's so ambiguous, but I guess we're going to have to watch this space as well. Now, when it comes to Sgt Rock, Entertainment Weekly said, I also wanted to ask about Sgt Rock. With all of the information flying out there, could you set the record straight on that in terms of where it is? Now, Gunn says, I feel like we're in a pretty good place. We're still moving forward, but it's not going to be, what would Peter want me to say here? So it's still moving forward, but yeah, right now it wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be creatively. And so it needs to change a little bit. So once again, confirmation that Sgt Rock is apparently moving forward, which with the recent information we had about Gunn killing one of the DC movies, people were wondering, myself included, could that be Sgt Rock? But I kind of landed on Constantine 2 rather than The Authority or Sgt Rock. Now he's saying that it's still moving forward, okay, But I guess this also blows out the water the original answer we had from one of the major trades, I believe Deadline. And if I pull that up here, they say that while the film was supposed to enter production in the coming months, we're now told it will shoot next summer. Okay, as we know, it was kind of delayed, but a lot of you guys didn't necessarily believe that, which I understand the skepticism. But Deadline say Studio Insider said that ultimately shooting this summer was untenable as the team would have had to rush through prep to hit the right weather conditions at the right time. So we were originally hearing from a major trade that it was because of weather conditions. Granted that Studio Insiders as a source might not be always the most reliable thing, but Gunn himself is saying, no, it wasn't weather conditions. Not that he said that, but he said right now it wasn't exactly where he wanted it to be creatively. So it needs to change, as in, I guess the screenplay maybe needs to change. And the reason why I'm just exploring that pattern of thought is because, Gunn says that a script, a movie won't happen until the script is ready. So what was it with Sgt Rock? Especially when Peter Safran said this about Sgt Rock when DC Studios, Gunn and Safran did that little press address meeting thing. What we love about Sgt Rock is the opportunity to tell a story about heroism and conflict in a compelling and unique way. Justin really wrote a wonderful screenplay, and that's what catapulted that project to the forefront. So what's confusing a little bit about that, obviously, is, if the screenplay was wonderfully written and they were kind of moving ahead with it, why does it now need to creatively change? I wonder if we could get answers about that in the future. And I'd just be dying to know what about the Sgt Rock script wasn't really what James Gunn was creatively looking to see in his own DCU. Maybe the original version didn't have other characters in it from the larger metahuman superhero world, and maybe this version could, and creatively James Gunn wants to see something. This is like all random speculation from me, but now knowing that metahumans have been around for like over 300 years, I've been saying I would love to see some JSA type like Days of Old metahumans like maybe pop up, but again, then would you be taking away from a movie that is meant to be about Sgt Rock in World War II? Entertainment Weekly then say Paradise Lost, and Gunn says Paradise Lost is moving along. It's slow moving, but it's moving. And yeah, I really love that project a lot. So it just seems to me that Paradise Lost, like obviously they're pursuing it, but they really want to make it work because, giving comparisons to like Game of Thrones and stuff like that, which I totally get with what they're doing, like, Themyscira thousands of years ago, the political intrigue, there is interesting origins to like the gods and the Amazons and stuff like that. You don't want to just push that out there to be this kind of half-baked show that you've kind of said is inspired by the kind of Game of Thrones-esque kind of format for it to not remotely be nearly as prestigious when technically maybe if you worked on it to get it right, sure it's slow moving, but if you get it right, it could actually be something that would maybe even belong on HBO. But we'll have to see if it's going to be more of a Max thing or HBO. But I think that they have aims of it being more of an HBO type of thing if they truly lock in and make it something special. Entertainment Weekly then say, is that really directly connected to your larger plans for Wonder Woman in this space? Gunn then says, yes. Well, yes and no. Wonder Woman's a separate thing. We're working on Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's being written right now, so it's different. I mean, not different. They're connected. She's from Themyscira. So Wonder Woman, the movie that we know they're working on right now, is separate. Yet obviously Themyscira Paradise Lost is a part of Wonder Woman's world. But at the same time, I do think, as per what was originally explained to us, that this is set before the birth of Diana, before Wonder Woman. So Wonder Woman isn't in Paradise Lost, even though there's been theories from people saying, well, technically she could narrate the series, or it could end with the birth of Wonder Woman, I guess, but I think, like, from his answers here, they're still intended to be somewhat separate, but as he said, I mean, they're connected in some way, because after all, she's from Themyscira. So, and then Entertainment Weekly say, is there anything more that you can say about this mystery project that you're writing next? Is this the project that you'll direct next? Well, I always leave saying I'm going to direct something till I'm actually done with the screenplay, and then I say, yeah, I want to do this. But it's probably what I will direct. Yeah, probably. To be totally realistic, yes, Probably. So that's Gunn's next project, which we've explored quite a bit. People don't know whether it's going to be a World's Finest or if they're going to explore like some kind of other superhero team, possibly expanding, Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, with other characters like Martian Manhunter and so on and so forth. And ultimately what we have to work with is that it's not a direct sequel to Superman, because that would kind of be Superman 2, right? It's going to consist of stuff connected to Superman, the movie. So that can be Superman himself, obviously with Batman, and maybe or Wonder Woman, so a World's Finest or a Trinity project, or it will be other characters who are the other bigger characters in Superman, his metahuman compatriots, and expanding Max Warlord's team. And I'm more on the side of the latter right now, but truly, I could be completely wrong about that. Also, a lot of you are saying, what if it's the Terrifics? Like, we have Metamorpho go off with Mr. Terrific, and, you get Plastic Man and Gunn. I feel like he would love writing the Terrifics as well. Are there other characters who will appear in Superman who have not been announced yet? Yes. So I'm assuming that would be Millie Alcock's Supergirl, Kara, and my theory of that, maybe you haven't heard it, I think that Kara, as per Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, arrived on Earth a few years ago, and compared to Clark, who's been raised from birth as, amongst humanity, she's having a hard time meshing in with the world. So I think it wouldn't surprise me if she's away, like in education, and that's why, as David Corenswet said, Krypto's more of a fostering situation now, like a foster to look after, like temporarily maybe, until Kara gets back. So I wouldn't be surprised if she's one of the unannounced roles, and she comes back to collect Krypto before going off onto her own movie. I don't expect it to be a huge scene, but still, it's like an officially unannounced little scene maybe towards the end of the film. But there are other characters that will appear in Superman that have not been announced. Like, there was the bloody squirrel that was seen on set filming. There's all these metahumans and characters locked up in Lex's metahuman or prison containment facility place. And considering the trailer is showing that place getting decimated, or like Metropolis getting decimated, because it looks like that quantum other pocket dimension place is bleeding out into the reality. Maybe all of those people escape. So like one of those, we have bloody animal, vegetable, mineral man in Creature Commandos. So who knows who else could kind of make an appearance in Superman. Now, one of the things that you and Peter emphasized early on is bringing this idea of unity and cohesion across all of these DC titles. But then you also have these Elseworlds titles like Reeves's films and the Penguin series. How do you see both of those things remaining true? But also, he gave another little tidbit of information about a famous actor who's pitched something, and I think I might know what that is. So Gunn says, well, it is going to be mostly DCU, and then occasionally there's some Elseworlds tales. There are things that naturally lend themselves to Elseworlds tales. We have a lot of animated projects, and they are sort of a different beast. They aren't all like Creature Commandos. The truth is, the DCU, we give people a lot of freedom to tell different stories, but also we have to be really involved to make sure that, say, the power set of Supergirl and Superman are the same. There's a lot of really silly shit that we have to give notes on in screenplays, like powers or what cities exist in the DCU that don't exist in other places. We aren't the regular world. We're the DCU. There isn't necessarily Seattle, but there's an Evergreen. There isn't necessarily a New York, but there's a Gotham. So all of that type of stuff needs to be dialed in. So there's definitely room for people to tell other stories. And when it's somebody who's important, like Matt Reeves, who I've had an admiration for a long time as one of the very, very few filmmakers who is out there making spectacle, commercial fare, that is also an artist, then you have to stand up and listen. The script still needs to be good. We're not going to make it unless we like the script, but I think that there are exceptions. I told it to one person who came in and pitched something that was an Elseworlds tale. It was a very, very, very famous movie actor. I said, it depends on how the screenplay comes out. If it's a masterpiece, I'll make it, but it has to be a masterpiece. And he's like, I don't know if it's a masterpiece. He got all funny. He's still working on it, though. He's still trying to do it, so we'll see. Masterpiece might be pushing it, but it's got to be really great. If it's an Elseworlds tale, then it's worth telling something that might tend to confuse a few people, but also part of our thing is really being clear about what is Elseworlds and what is DCU. And the other thing is not just giving away properties like they're party favors to people doing low-budget TV shows or stuff that we have no quality control over because we're making a few $1,000s on the rights. It is having some sense of quality control over everything. So, overall, agree with a lot of things that he's saying now. I think the very, very famous actor is none other than Keanu Reeves with Constantine 2. It is important to bear in mind that this interview seemed to take place some time ago, and what I am wondering is, did that screenplay not work out, and that is the DC movie that Gunn said that was killed recently? Because one thing is, as I've mentioned in my previous videos, that Keanu Reeves himself said that he wasn't, well, it was through another actor who's also going to be in Constantine 2, that he had spoken to Keanu and he's really not happy with where the script's been going. And it's like they're looking at all the John Wick stuff he's done and they want Constantine 2 to be like that, you know, crazy Keanu Reeves level stuff that you'd come to expect. And, you know, I'm sure Keanu Reeves loves doing movies like that, but I think he's kind of like, with Constantine, nah, man, I want it to be like this. So maybe Gunn did kill it, and this quote is, I wouldn't say old, but just maybe slightly out of sync. But maybe that killed DC movie could be something else entirely different. But also, it's very interesting hearing him say something that he said before. Like, it kind of needs to be a masterpiece, but he acknowledges that masterpiece might be pushing it. But it's got to be really great. Like, years ago, he says there's a very high bar for Elseworlds movies to justify making it. Because, yes, everything will primarily be DCU. And I don't blame Gunn for that at all. Like, the DCU is the main shtick. But hey, like, if you want to do an Elseworlds movie, we're not opposed to doing that. Because look at Joker, still made over $1 billion. Look at The Batman, very successful. So the last thing is that they're just going to make it incredibly clear that this is Elseworlds when there's an Elseworlds project, and this is DCU. They're going to try and do everything they can to not confuse the general audience, which I still don't think people give the general audience enough credit when it comes to understanding this stuff. Because whenever I've spoken to somebody about it, it was as easy as me saying something like, hey, so like, you remember Christian Bale's Batman? Like, he's clearly not the new cinematic universe, but you understand that that was like a separate kind of like, you know, venture in a trilogy of movies. They're like, yeah. So basically, Matt Reeves' Batman is like that. Just a separate thing. Anyway, moving on, Peter Safran was telling me a little bit about Clayface and how the hope is to start filming at some point this year. Assuming that the script is in this good place, in the weeks following this interview, Gunn announced Tom Rhys-Harris in the lead role. The new script is great. It's great. I mean, the first script was great, and then this new draft is even better. The movie's definitely getting made. So that's what I mean about how this interview clearly took place some time ago. And what they mean by that is, yes, Mike Flanagan, as James Gunn recently announced with Tom Rees, still is the writer, because when literally crediting the writer, he says written by Mike Flanagan. But when people are like saying, what do they mean? Like, you know, they're kind of doing another version. That sounds like a director's pass, as Apocalyptic Horseman originally reported. It's not a page one rewrite. It's just that they're doing a very ordinary thing when they fit it into what James Watkins' directorial vision will be for the movie, but still fundamentally making it Mike Flanagan's story and written structure, which is inspired by Feet of Clay. Now, continuing Clayface here, and there's something that caught me off guard. I'm like, eh? And I don't know if I'm going to be reading into it too much. So, what goes into a decision to bring Clayface into the DCU versus an Elseworlds title? Well, I think it was just we needed DCU content. Mike Flanagan is somebody who I've been friendly with for a long time, and he wrote me about Clayface. He texted me about it really on in my DC journey. Just being honest, I did not think that it was something that was going to happen, but he came in and he pitched the idea, and I was like, oh shit, that's cool. It's a body horror movie. It's a horror movie that, like any cool body horror movie, just happens to be in the DCU. And then he wrote the script, and the script was fantastic. We did not plan to do Clayface. That was really something he brought to us. And here it is. Because this is DCU, is this the same Clayface that we met in Creature Commandos? Gunn then says, I think that everyone will find that out. Now, I really don't know if I'm, like, looking into this too much. But, like, wouldn't you just say yes if it was the Clayface in Creature Commandos? And the reason why, you know, I'm exploring that it could be another Clayface is because, you know, you do have, like, Basil Karlo, and you can have, like, Matt Hagen. I've said from the get-go that I'm not truly a fan, like a huge fan of having multiple iterations of a character. Sure, there's exceptions, but like if there were two Clayfaces that happen to be a big blob monster in a very similar way, I don't know, that kind of detracts. I don't mind if you had Basil Karlo as more of a golden age Clayface, a man who took on the Clayface actual role in the movie and started murdering people as per the classic Clayface, and you actually had Matt Hagen in that same universe become a blob monster Clayface. But, I just feel like the fact he says, but is this the same Clayface that we met in Creature Commandos? I think that everyone will find that out. Call me crazy, but I feel like that is implying that maybe it isn't. But he's still very much so going to be a Clayface. And I have said that I know, like, going from animation, even canonical animation like Creature Commandos to live action, there's going to be some differences in portrayals. Like, I don't think Rick Flag Sr. and Peacemaker is going to be exactly the vibes as the adult-toned Creature Commandos series, even though they're literally canon to one another. So I've always said I kind of struggle... and I was going to, like, see how they do it, but I kind of struggled to believe that the Clayface from Creature Commandos was really going to be the Mike Flanagan, Feet of Clay-inspired Clayface in live action. The guy who was creeping on students in that college campus, playing Xbox. There's nothing wrong with playing Xbox, but do you know what I mean? That's going to be the Tom Reese, Matt Hagen Clayface, just before the events of that happening in Creature Commandos. It always felt a bit off to me, but I just put it down to translation from animation to live action. They take a bit more goofiness with the animated side of things, but what if there is more to it with him saying, I think that everyone will find that out, as in, when you watch it, you will find out whether it is that version or not. But I don't know. I'm going to shut up about this now. Let me know your thoughts. Now, next up, we actually have Gunn talking about that Superman shot that kind of drove a lot of people crazy on that Icon TV spot. So, Entertainment Weekly says, there was that situation on social media where people thought David flying was a CG superimposed thing. Was that telling when you talk about having to figure out how to pull off these mechanics of getting David to fly authentically? Gunn says, no, I don't think it was so much. It was a TV commercial and it wasn't a finished visual effect shot. So the part of him flying, it was a photograph of his face and him flying. It was a photograph of a drone flying in front of an actual background. So all of those pieces were real, but it was incorporated in kind of a funky way. I didn't love the shot, so it's not even the shot that's in the movie. Sometimes I'm pretty strict about when I'm going through a trailer and looking at each of the shots, but sometimes the commercials, I forget to look at this closely, so that one kind of got by me. So I find that fascinating because that's Gunn actually saying, yeah, like this isn't even in the movie, and he even admits that it came off in a bit of a funky way, even though when that first came out, he responded to people on threads saying that it wasn't CG, and that's true, like that was David Corenswet's face, and they actually used a drone like in the Arctic flying and getting that real like footage and combined it to make it obviously look like Superman was flying towards the fortress. But with the kind of lens that they use, that's something Gunn also spoke about when everyone was up in arms about this. It can, the wide angle, that close up can make the face look a bit strange. So Gunn even admits again here that, the way it was incorporated did give it a bit of a funky look. He agrees with plenty of you in how he didn't like that shot either. Now, the question is, did he kind of have that thought even more so after people were really not liking it when that Icon TV spot released and incorporated the feedback there, and he looked at it, was like, yeah, you know what, that is a bit of a funky shot, and I'm not going to put that in the movie. I don't know. Now, other little tidbits from the article are just stuff that we went over previously in my video dedicated to the other Entertainment Weekly articles. So don't worry, I'm not missing anything out that I haven't covered before. We've also had other little tidbits come out with regards to a new Lex Luthor promo, which I really enjoyed. I love special feature stuff like this. But there's even more promo stuff coming out, such as a little clip of the interview. I mean, we already noticed about it, but when you see this clip, everything David Corenswet and Rachel Brosnahan has said makes even more sense. And I don't know, fair enough if you're staying away from this stuff, but I really enjoyed that little sneak peek. And there's apparently like another 10 minutes of it in the movie. And yes, Present Boba here. As I was editing this video, of course, there's even more promos coming out. So I do want to just say, if you're not a fan of new shots and stuff like that, maybe you don't want to see this. It's not like crazy spoilers, as I usually say, but it's like new angles of Metamorpho using his kryptonite hands, stuff like that. But very briefly here, I'll go over stuff like this in more detail early next week in a news roundup or something, because I'm sure there's going to be even more stuff. Like, you know, recently, I think earlier on today, James Gunn confirms that Pom Klementieff is one of the Fortress robots. Bradley Cooper has a role in Superman. That's been officially noted now. But briefly here, I really like this new 30-second TV spot. We see Superman initially flying there, and then some familiar shots, but it's mostly centering around the commentary of Superman, his identity amongst the people. It starts off with Lois saying, "You were out there saving them." Now, this could really be from any part of the movie, and he said, "I thought I was," and it cuts to the people throwing stuff at him. So, you know, maybe this is when he genuinely thought he was helping people out, whether that's saving people from the kaiju or some other part of the film, and you know, he thinks that he was doing the right thing, but there's this rejection he's experiencing. He's not necessarily who he thought he was, as we've heard from a line in another trailer. There's a bit of like a, I don't know if I would quite want to say identity crisis, but at some point in this movie, it is about Clark reconciling with who he is amongst and his place amongst humanity. And the trailer just truly continues in that direction. When we hear David Corenswet kind of project this line, it's kind of like he's shouting it at Luthor, given the location at the end of this little promo. It seems to be in Luthor's little Luthor Corp control room. And he says, "They've always been wrong about me. I get scared, but that is being human. And that's my greatest strength." And I don't know, I'm really excited to see this scene. And I think one of the most appealing things when seeing little promo clips like this, seeing more oomph from Superman himself in the marketing. You know, you may have heard people say this Superman really has a lot of personality. And what I think they mean there compared to, you know, let's just say Henry Cavill's, is Henry Cavill's, as I think, was it Rolling Stone or Entertainment Weekly? Someone said when they were talking to James Gunn that the previous iteration was more stoic, but this Clark, he's just giving you a bit more. And I'm not saying he's going to be your favorite or mine, like we still need to see the movie, but you do get so much more kind of out of this Superman from what we're seeing, at least initially. Maybe that may be too premature for some of you to say, but I can just tell personally that this very heart-led Superman is going to lead to hopefully so many good Superman moments in the film, and I feel like they teased one of those moments right towards the end of this promo. Now, we do get those other bonus shots of Superman being forced into that metahuman cell with Metamorpho. We get this little extra angle here of him using his kryptonite hand to like really push him down to the floor, and I trust that Metamorpho really won't be doing that, you know, enjoying it. I think, again, he's probably got his toddler son and Sapphire Stag being threatened, but it's cool to see that kryptonite being used, how it's lit up there, and you can see those little veins swell up in Superman's face, and I think that leads to that shot of us seeing Ma and Pa Kent caring for Clark in his Superman suit back at the Kent farm. So I think he gets out of here, but he kind of crashes back at home to kind of recover, and amongst all of that, that's where you'll get the Pa Kent advice scene, and I really like this shot of Superman kind of hovering mid-air, cape flowing in the wind, as Metropolis is literally split into two there. Overall, not crazy amounts of new footage, but it was one that I couldn't really resist including in this video. Plus, you know, knowing how it usually is here, someone would be like, "Boba, the curse is struck again." Now, just to let you know, I know there's little bits and pieces coming out all the time, little tidbits, so just know I will cover it in a brand new video, I'm sure. But I think that is more than enough for today. Now, I'm probably going to end the video here. There is more stuff coming out, especially with James Gunn, David Corenswet, Rachel Brosnahan starting the Superman World Tour right now. There's going to be even more things to talk about in the days and weeks to come. So I hope you enjoyed this video, though, for what it was. Another massive information dump breakdown. Let me know any and all theories that you have with regards to the stuff that we got into. And if you're still watching right now, we'd just greatly appreciate if you hit that like button. It just really helps grow this video, shares it to new people who may not have come across the channel. And of course, if you're still watching right now and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? I'm sure you're going to enjoy the future videos here. But until next time, I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.